Good afternoon. We're going to get started. Welcome to our event on racially diverse leaders for racially diverse cities. My name is Luisa Blanco, and I am a professor of public policy and economics at Pepperdine School of Public Policy and a chair of the Diversity Committee at our school. The Diversity Committee was created this summer with the support of Dean Peterson, with the goal to provide a forum for students, faculty, staff, and alumni to engage to build a diverse community founded on a set of core values that strive toward academic excellence and a shared sense of belonging. As we move forward to address COVID-19 disproportionate impacts on communities of color, having diverse leaders at the administrative level is more important than ever. These leaders will be responsible for devising policies and programs that truly meet the needs of the community. I believe that we should take a bottom-up approach where solutions and plans should truly come from our community leaders. And I'm looking forward to learn today from our speakers about their experiences addressing the needs of the communities they serve. I would like to introduce next Pepperdine School of Public Policy, Dean Pete Peterson, who is the Brown Family Dean's Chair and Senior Fellow at the Davenport Institute. He will be introducing our speakers. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Blanco, and welcome all to today's conversation, Racially Diverse Leaders for Racially Diverse Cities. As Dr. Blanco says, I'm Pete Peterson, the very grateful Dean of Pepperdine's Graduate School of Public Policy, and I'm so excited about today's conversation, welcoming such terrific leaders at the city level to talk about their experiences and background and work in leading in both difficult, challenging, but also opportunities, places where there are great opportunities for students and those who might be considering careers in the public service. This is our fifth webinar since the summer here at the Policy School, focusing on issues of race, policy, and public leadership. And as we look toward the rest of the spring semester, I'm excited about the plans that we have to continue in this programming. Let me quickly introduce you to our terrific panelists for today. We begin with Lieutenant Angela Averett. She's a Bay Area native and started her career in law enforcement on the staff side back in 1996, working as a records clerk for the City of Hayward Police Department. She moved from behind the desk to out into the street in 2001, joining the police department as a police officer, promoted to lieutenant in 2014. Angela also managed the Honor Guard team and was the assistant team leader on the crisis or hostage negotiations team. In 2019, Angela made the transition to the San Francisco Bay Area Rapid Transit District, or BART. She is the San Francisco area commander, and prior to her current assignment, where she is the interim deputy chief of support services. Angela is currently the vice president of the California Association of Hostage Negotiators and has served on the board in different capacities for over a decade. She has served as a parliamentarian of the San Francisco Bay Area NOBLE, or National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, and a parliamentarian of the Barbershop Forum Group, an organization that works to bridge the communication gap between law enforcement and the community. Great to have you with us here, Angela. Troy Brown was appointed city manager of the city of Moore Park, just over the hill, in 2018. Brown has been in municipal government leadership for over 25 years, beginning with the city of Santa Clarita. He has served as the assistant CM for the cities of Riverside and Elk Grove, assistant CM as well for the city of Livermore, and was city manager of the city of Tracy before moving here to Southern California. Throughout his municipal career, he's been appointed to executive leadership and positions reorganizing city departments, overseeing construction and numerous capital improvement projects at the local government level. Brown has served on numerous community organizations and policy committees with the League of California Cities, and I'm delighted to be joined here by so many from that league. In addition, Brown has served as a West Coast Regional Vice President for the ICMA chapter here in California, and was recently elected by the ICMA board as the National Association's president-elect. Troy has also served as a director of Vantage Trust Company, which has mingled investments, pulled together investments in the amount of $50 billion in retirement plans administered by ICMA. And it's great to have Troy here with us. Artie Fields, longtime friend, has been city manager of the city of Inglewood for many years. He comes to Southern California from his time as city manager in Salinas, where I first got to meet Artie. Almost immediately after coming to Salinas, Fields worked and was tasked with the responsibility of balancing a $13 million budget shortfall. And I remember meeting Artie in those days back in 2008 and 2009. That was over 10% of the municipal general fund budget, I remember, and an amazing feat of leadership to lead Salinas through that. Fields has served as a city assistant CM in the city of West Covina. And during that period, he was responsible for assisting with the general management of the city, overseeing local cable TV programming and public relations functions as well. Throughout his career, Fields has become known for his ability to work with a variety of nonprofit, community-based, and business groups to solve problems and address issues in the community, along with the city government. He has also worked extensively on programs involving youth services, community relations, legislative functions, budgeting, and served in leadership roles with numerous special task forces and staff development programs. Fields is a current member of the ICMA, the National Black Forum for Black Public Administrators, and a life member of the San Gabriel Valley NAACP. Artie, great to have you with us. And finally, Ingrid Hardy. Ingrid has a deep passion and enthusiasm for public service. She currently serves as the Assistant City Manager of Thousand Oaks. She has worked at 4 municipalities, including Los Angeles, Santa Clarita, Oxnard, and again, currently as the Assistant City Manager for Thousand Oaks. Ingrid holds bachelor's degrees in sociology from Cal and an MPA with distinction from Cal State Northridge. I'm delighted to say that Ingrid has been on our advisory council, as Artie has, of our Davenport Institute here at Pepperdine. She's also served for the League of California Cities Policy Committee on Housing, Community, and Economic Development, as well as the Policy Committee and Community Services Committee. Ingrid has also served as an executive board member and regional board member for MMASC. And with that, I welcome you all in. Stop my screen share. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
I wanted to begin with actually a quotation, this from the ICMA website, and it touches on the history of people of color serving in positions of city management. This is from the story on the ICMA website, the story of African-American city and county managers. I want to begin here and then get your thoughts. More than 60 years after the council member form of government was established in the United States, and the earliest city managers were appointed, the first African city manager to join the profession was in 1968, when James C. Johnson was hired by the city of Compton. Today, several hundred African-American city and county managers serve as their municipality's chief executive officer in communities around the United States. And while that number has grown, it is still a small percentage of the total number of these positions in cities and counties across the United States. Let's begin with a question about, without great examples or many examples, what attracted you all to positions in either public safety? Angela, we'll direct that to you, or in city management. And to begin with that question, Troy, why don't we start with you? What attracted you to a career in city leadership?
You know, Pete, that's a fantastic quote, by the way. Thank you. And thank you for the ICMA plug there. Always appreciate that. You know, I don't think there was ever sort of a defining moment for me. I almost tell people that I fell into the profession sometimes, but if I look back to it, you know, I was class president when I was in 11th grade in high school. And the reason I did that was because I felt like it brought me joy. You know, I liked creating policies and programs that still stand the test of time. You know, back when I graduated in 1980 something, there was no 11th grade dance at the time. So when I was class president, one of the things that we implemented was an 11th grade dance, and it still goes on today. So when I started working for cities initially, I didn't even know what a city manager was, but I loved the impact that I had on the community. I started out in the Parks and Recreation Department at a city that was growing very quickly at the time. And I loved the feeling of actually helping people in the community do the things they wanted to do. And I come to find out that we all had a lot in common. I mean, most people want a lot of the same things. And the more I progressed throughout my career and attained different responsibilities, the greater the impact I had on that. So that's what's been driving me in this profession, which has been my heart for just wanting to have a bigger purpose than creating some widget out there. I feel like I'm really having an impact on certainly my community, but in some small way, the world as well.
Ingrid, let's come to you. What attracted you to leadership and at the municipal level?
Thanks, Pete. Well, you know, I'll start off for me. I actually started out working in the nonprofit sector. And I kind of always knew growing up, coming from a family of service, that I wanted to serve my community in some sort of fashion. So I started out in the nonprofit community, working with homeless families and individuals, youth that have been removed from their home. And I happened to hear about a job with the city of Los Angeles, and it was working with underserved youth. And I thought, well, let me give this a shot and see what happens. And similar to Troy, I had no idea what a city manager was. It wasn't something that I was planning for my career. And, you know, when I had the opportunity to work for City of LA, I just found it fascinating, rewarding, and I wanted more. I wanted to learn more about how policies were being developed, how decisions were made. And so I took that experience from the City of LA and I started working for smaller municipalities where I'd have the opportunity to get a little bit closer to that decision making. And there's nothing like the tangible impact that you have as a city manager. I mentioned this to a group of Pepperdine students before when I was on a panel, but you know, many public policy and public administration students think you got to get to Washington or you got to get to Sacramento. And so for me, I, you know, while I applaud those, you know, the positions and the work that's being done in state and federal government, I just think for local government, you know, the tangible impact, how you can see how your work is affecting the community on a daily basis. So that's it for me and why I chose this profession.
Hardy, how about you?
Yeah, so like both Troy and the previous speaker, Ingrid, I started out having a degree in psychology, and when my senior year came, I decided that I didn't want to be a psychologist anymore. So I went to see a career counselor, and we talked about, you know, environments that I had been in that I enjoyed in the past when I've worked. And I was an orderly in high school when I was in high school. And so I started out going to graduate school to be a hospital administrator. And but once I got into graduate school, and the first internship I got was with the municipal government, with a municipal agency. And you know, the second internship I got was with another city, and the third internship. So I said, okay, I guess my track has changed, and I'm going to go into city government. And it was a great change for me. It's something that I had never thought about. I definitely hadn't thought about being a city manager. And as I got more and more into city government, the closer I saw what city managers did and the short-lived careers they would have at different cities, I just said to myself, I'll never be a city manager. But my last
330 municipal police chiefs. Of those 330 individuals, I think less than 20 are Black people. And so coming up in this profession, I've noticed the underrepresentation of people of color, and that's really what has driven me and propelled me to move forward. In my current role as a deputy chief, which I got the permanent position last August, I'm not stopping here. I definitely plan to be a police chief one day, hopefully one day soon. And that's going to be, the next chapter and the next challenge. But what attracted me to this job in the first place, and Pete, please forgive me, you've heard this story like 3,000 times, so sorry if it's redundant.
It's a great story.
So I originally wanted to be, first I thought I was going to be a chemist, and I realized that my brain didn't have enough cells in it to comprehend doing that. So then I decided I wanted to be an airline pilot, and but I was really poor, and so I couldn't afford flying lessons. And so my brother, who's a fireman still to this day, had told me about a job working at the Averett Police Department as a records clerk. And I saw the salary and I was like, wow, I'll be able to take flying lessons, if I get this job. And so I had never had any intention of going into city government, but I got hired in that position, in that civilian position. And then I went on a ride along, and the ride along just changed everything. I really had this thought of what a police officer looked like. I never really saw anyone that looked like me. And one of the first ride-alongs I went on was with a Black female, and she was so tough. And I just remember like my stomach hurt because I was so excited. And I was like, wow, you can talk to people like that? Like you can do this? Like it was weird to me to walk into someone's house and arrest them. And so that really got me interested in law enforcement. And then once I became a police officer, again, I started noticing that the diversity was really lacking, in particular with females. And so, and especially, it goes even smaller than that in females of color. And so I really believed that if I stayed in my position as a police officer, I wouldn't be able to have the same impact, not only on my organization, but on law enforcement as a whole, unless I moved up. And so I started promoting, and I always made a commitment to myself that I wouldn't forget about those who are coming after me. And so I've really tried to blaze this path to make the move easier for people that come after me, because let me tell you, my path to get to where I'm at right now has been extremely rocky. It's been a huge struggle. I wouldn't change it for the world though, because it made me, strong and fierce. But that's not to say that other people need to go through that same struggle. And so, I do this not only to help those in law enforcement, but I really have a strong commitment to the communities that I serve. And real quick, BART, it goes through 5 counties. We have 50 stations, over 100 miles of, trackway or whatever. So it's a huge transit system. We have so many different walks of life. We serve so many different communities. We have international folks who visit San Francisco. And so the footprint I'm able to lay out is so much larger now, because I can reach more people. And I believe if I even touch one person, if I can just help one person in life on the worst day of their life sometimes, then my mission is complete.
Well, thanks for that, Angela. We have set the table. I want to give a note on the agenda for this webinar. As with most all of our SPP webinars, we will have a conversation here for the better part of the next 25 or 30 minutes, and we will reserve the balance of our time, 15 or 20 minutes. And I'll just say, and indulge, we're going to run a bit over the top of the hour. I can already sense that. I hope you're all willing to join me in that. And with that, we welcome your questions. Those in the audience who are watching, questions can be added through, submitted through the chat feature at the bottom of the screen, and I'll make sure that we get to those in our last 15 or 20 minutes. I wasn't going to go here, but I'll, Angela, something that you just said, and I saw some agreement, I think, among the panel. This is certainly part of the reason why we're doing webinars like this, is to set the example. Anyone on the panel want to venture forth and talk about how you see your work, not just for the job that it is, but as a way of setting an example for others, particularly people of color who may be coming behind you? And welcome any of your thoughts on how you view your work through that lens.
I don't think you can have a position like any of ours and not understand that you are an example, a role model for others, and I'm constantly aware of that, and I open my arms to it. I'm happy to be that, and there are so many people that have seen me in my position. Students have said, look, I've never thought about being a city manager, and now they see me as a Black man in that job, now it's something that seems real for them to aspire to be. So I've seen, I've had residents call me, who have never thought about government or even contacting their city hall for anything beyond calling for the police department. And they're just seeing a Black person in the job, it opens the doors for a lot of people to reimagine what their life could be like and what career options they have, and outside of sports and all the things that are normal to a lot of young Black kids. It's just an additional option for them, and I think that's what's really fulfilling for me, is to just be able to present myself in a way that others want to emulate and say, you know what, I want to do what Mr. Fields is doing.
Any others on that?
So as a leader, it's a huge responsibility and a higher calling. That's how I look at it. We, we have a responsibility to, manage city finances, to recommend sound policies to the city council. In my position as an assistant city manager, I not only support my boss, who is more outward facing and deals directly with the city council, but I have a responsibility to all the staff, 380 staff that work in our organization. And so being in this position, for me, it means that I'm opening the lines of communication. I'm connecting with others. I'm having conversation and guiding and mentoring others that may not have received that type of opportunity in another organization. There are others that have offered the same to me, and I want to be able to, lend myself to others as well, and to show others that it is possible. One, to be in a leadership position as a person of color, but also, I want to let everyone know that's attending today that city management is a profession that is predominantly men. And while the numbers are changing, I think we're still like hovering around 14% of women in city leadership positions. And so I also make it a point to, connect with women who are interested in city management, and to let them know that it is possible. And it comes with its challenges. I had to knock down some doors. I've had to make tough decisions. I've had to use my voice. I've had to not, make myself smaller to make others feel better. I mean, it comes with its challenges, but it is certainly possible.
I want to explore the intersection of being a woman and a person of color as well a little bit later in this conversation, but I thank you, Ingrid, for raising that, as well as you, Angela. I want to move to a question about the work that you do in the cities in which you serve. It might be a surprise for some. I thought you raised a very good point, Ingrid, before, when you said that so many, when they think about government, whether they're graduate students or not, think about the hive, right? They think about the mothership, whether it's DC or Sacramento, and they don't think so much at the city level. And I think also there are so many of us, when we think about politics, we think about electeds and not those who are working on the administrative side like you all are. And so my question is two-part. One, one of the reasons I'm so fascinated about work at the local government level is that in an age of polarization, many of the issues that you confront are not necessarily national, federal, partisan issues. There can still be a lot of conflict, but they're not inherently partisan. At the same time, given what we've experienced around the quest for racial justice over the last year, many of these issues are rising at the local level, right? They're happening at the city level. The issues involved, whether it's housing or public safety, are local government issues. And so I was hoping you could speak a little bit to how, as Black leaders, not only how do you facilitate conversations where there isn't an inherent partisanship, but at the same time may have an issue, a lens of race associated with it. Troy, maybe we can begin with you on that.
Yeah, thanks. That is the emerging trend. That's one of the exciting things about the job, is that it's just not the same thing every day. And I think back to, my early days of when I got into local government. I got in actually because I saw a city manager that was just really good at facilitating difficult conversations and finding common ground. And that has evolved over time to become more and more difficult. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We won't go into that. But you're right. These issues that are sort of popping up, particularly as it relates to housing, aren't necessarily sort of polarizing, but they were born from a polarized sort of framework of, how back in early days where we had housing policies that sort of precluded certain groups. So it does sort of lend itself to really careful navigation of those issues. And the way that I navigate that is, really from a place of equality. I mean, there are some stated facts out there about any number of policy issues that we could all sort of agree on. And I think that most people could agree on the fact that everyone should have the opportunity to have a safe, protective place where they can call home. Now, the size of that, where that is, all of that matters. But universally, we don't disagree that when we raise children in our community, they should be able to live in that community, have children in that community, and have a history and a generation in that community, rather than being born there and moving out. And there are obstacles preventing that from happening. And if you can frame a policy conversation around the actions that are leading up to it, therein lies the solution. I don't want to sit down and necessarily talk about someone's particular services in their zip code. I really focus on the bigger picture policy question, which is, how do we accommodate housing for the people that want to call this community home? And that's a good way to put a conversation and reach consensus on issues that are universal to most people. And it becomes more and more difficult as you sort of poke away. Now, if you start talking about things like social justice, that's a different lens of a conversation. And then you really have to read the community and where they are and understand what they value in that conversation, and pick on another universal acceptance that most people want to be heard. Most people should have the right at, the same equal rights that everyone else has. So you detach the politics away from it and focus on these universal fronts. That's been my recipe for success. And frankly, I've had a lot of success with that because that's what the community is saying. I don't come out with radical ideas that Troy wants to get done or that this person wants to get done. I'm mainly a vehicle to implement what I'm being heard in the community. And that makes the conversation a lot more cordial, and you're likely to reach success there.
Angela, obviously some of the issues around race center specifically in the public safety arena. And so wondering, as one who wears the badge, how you've experienced that.
I'll try not to take an hour answering this question. In my current assignment, I'm in charge of the Progressive Policing and Community Engagement Bureau. It was a new bureau that was formed in August of last year by my chief, specifically stemming from the events of the summer of 2020. As a police officer, I was extremely saddened by the things that I saw. I was angry. As a Black woman, I was hurt because I have Black children. I have, Black nieces and nephews. I'm a Black woman myself. And so I almost got to see this issue from both sides of the coin. And so I reached a point where I almost felt helpless or hopeless because it seemed like such a huge problem that I didn't know how we were going to recover from this. But what I will say is, over time, I really started to think about it. And I think where we've gone wrong in law enforcement is that we don't listen to our communities. We need to first acknowledge people's perceptions of law enforcement, the things that they've gone through, good, bad, or indifferent. We need to stop making excuses, and we need to apologize for our past errors, even when those errors were not ones that we personally committed. But we also need to move forward, and we need to move forward together. It can no longer be the us against them and the law enforcement and the community, and we're meeting somewhere in the middle, but we're fighting. We're never going to make any progress if we do that. And so one of the ways that currently that we have listened to our communities is, as we know, homelessness is a huge problem in California. Of the over 500,000 estimated people across the nation who are homeless, 150,000, more than 150,000 of those individuals live in California. And so, $13 billion has been spent on homelessness over the last 3 years. That's a lot of money. Well, unfortunately, the issue of homelessness has fallen on the backs of police officers. Although we were given no training, no access to resources, there weren't really a lot of options available to us. Now, what we've done without all of that is BART is actually, we're about to hire social workers who will be paired with our police officers. They're going to be specially trained police officers who are trained in de-escalation, mental health, first aid, things like that. And they will go to these calls for service that we get that involve either people who are homeless or maybe experiencing some sort of mental illness, or maybe who are having substance abuse issues. It's a pilot project. It's a pilot program. It's never been done in BART before, and we're hoping that it's successful. But in order to get to this point, like I said, we had to acknowledge what our communities were asking us for. And then we had to work on a plan to move forward, to take action. And a large number of our homeless in the Bay Area are people of color. And so, we know that race, unfortunately, has been at the forefront of a lot of conversations over the last year in particular. And so we have to be extra sensitive to that. We need to make sure that we are not only policing equitably, but that we are providing people these services equitably, right? And so that's a whole nother conversation I can get into, but it's something I definitely think about every single day I come to work.
One of the things I think it might surprise those who are unfamiliar with the city management profession, or frankly, those serving in our police departments, is that it's a profession, it's a career in which there's a fair amount of travel. You can start in one place and move to another city, and oftentimes progressing up the ladder, so to speak, necessitates a move from one place to another. I would love to get your thoughts on your experiences in working in different cities, and whether that experience as being a person of color differed in such a way that you perceived challenges or opportunities. And now I'm looking both inside the municipality in which you've worked, but also outside into the community in which you're serving. Artie, maybe we can start with you. You've served
around more than anybody.
A lot of diversity, and I'll give you a little more time. But I mean, even the difference between Salinas as a city in its makeup and the type of city it is, and Inglewood, are dramatically different places.
So I've worked in probably more cities than most city managers. I've worked in, and the differences between those communities are very wide. I've worked for Beverly Hills, then Manhattan Beach, Pasadena, Pomona, West Covina, Salinas, San Leandro. So I've been to Northern California, Southern California, Central California. I've done it all. But I can tell you that in my career, I'm blessed in that I have not felt discriminated against by the community or by the people who have hired me. I've been welcomed, and they've appreciated, my Blackness and the diversity that I bring to the job, and my insight that I bring to the job. I'm not so naive. I think that there are a lot of jobs that I applied for that I didn't get. I applied for jobs all over the country, and I'm glad that the jobs that did hire me were here in Southern California. I'm here in California, but even in California, there are jobs that I didn't get. And, I was thinking about our conversation over the weekend about, have you experienced any discrimination in your career? And, maybe those jobs that I didn't get, maybe those folks didn't hire me because I was Black. Who knows? But I'm glad they didn't hire me, because the jobs that I did get were wonderful jobs with wonderful communities that embraced me and accepted me and allowed me to do the job that I did. It is hard. I'm a single man, so I was able to move around quite a bit without, having family, with regard to having family members. But now I have a little one here, a little 3-year-old, and I think about that. And now as a city manager, I'm trying to juggle the struggles of, being a single parent and having a child, and, not being able to spend all the hours, at office, have to get home and pick him up, and childcare and all of that. But it's hard. And I think people have to think about that when you're moving up the ladder, because you have a family. When you go apply for a job in Florida, you got to uproot your spouse, your significant other, and your children. And I didn't have to worry about that when I was moving up and down the state. So, but in all of that, it's made me who I am, and I've had tremendous opportunity. And it's, again, this whole panel is about race and Black History Month. And I can say that, I'm just very, honored that I've been able to work in diverse cities that didn't necessarily look like me, but I was very much embraced and appreciated for who I was and what I had to bring to the organization. And so that's what I have to say on that.
Great. Ingrid, your thoughts on that? And maybe just as I want to draw, you said something very interesting on the prep call I thought we had last week, in which you have a sense, being a leader of color in your city, that you are being sought out now and to lead conversations, or at least feed into them or moderate them. And I just wonder what that has felt like.
Sure. So I've worked in very diverse communities, both, racially diverse, socioeconomic diversity, from affluent to impoverished, and it has all kind of molded and shaped me into the leader that I am today. These, experiences that I have to draw upon, whether it's, direct or indirect discrimination, whether it's, tough conversations or overhearing a conversation that may have taken place. And it's, as far as the polarizing issues that we're dealing with today, it's forcing a conversation locally. And I think that as a woman of color, and as someone who has lived experience, family members with experience, but also being able to draw upon experiences as a public administrator in diverse communities, that it offers value to the organization, because it allows me to share a perspective from wearing two different hats. Is it I mentioned earlier that leadership is a major responsibility. It is a calling, and it's a huge burden, right? And I don't mean a burden in a negative way, but we are forced to have these, or it's our responsibility to have these tougher conversations. And so does it put me in a difficult position? Absolutely, it does. But do I recognize that that's my role as a city administrator? Yes, it absolutely is my role. One of the things that Angela mentioned earlier, and I just want to circle back on that, is listening to the community. And all of us on the call, when we're faced with tough community issues, our job is to listen. It's to understand all sides and perspectives of the issue and to make or recommend the best decision that we can based on what we've heard. And at the end of the day, I think all residents, staff members, or whoever is contributing to the conversation, they're going to want to know, was my voice heard? So have we listened? Yes. And making that decision, was my voice represented? And it may not turn out the way that you want it to, but was your opinion considered? Then that's the best that we can do.
Ingrid, that's a really good perspective on that. I worked for a city who will remain nameless, but rhymes with Riverside. But I worked for a city, and it's an incredibly diverse community, right? And when I got there as the assistant to the city manager, I instantly plugged into the Black community, who's very active in Riverside. And, the approach that I took, because you're right, it's somewhat of a burden sometimes, right? The approach that I took was, I'm very upfront, and I read like an open book, and I tell people, I am not the savior. I am not going to be the one to come in and change years and decades of bad policy. But listen, here's how you plug into the process. You got to show up at council meetings. You got to write your elected officials. You got to vote. These are the things that you got to do to impact that change. And to the extent that I'm helping the community in that way, it's still, and I tell that to whether you're Black, yellow, brown, or indifferent. But I have the ability, I think, to speak to different groups because they look like me than other groups. And I exploit that to the extent that I can to enhance the democratic process. And I think that's what makes it better.
Absolutely.
Really
Can
good.
I comment on that really quick?
Of
too?
course.
Especially when we talk about exploiting. So at my previous agency, I was the only Black female police officer of an agency of about 180 to 200 sworn police officers. And so a lot of times I was used as the token to go to community meetings and to participate in community events, which I absolutely love, by the way, and would have gone even if I wasn't sent there. But, and I think part of it was fear from the people above me who didn't really know how to connect with that population in the community. I think I used it to my advantage, though, in the sense that it gave me an opportunity to connect with people, right? Because at the end of the day, I don't care if I'm the token or not. If it means that I'm able to reach people and connect people to resources, or even give people a different understanding of law enforcement and what we do as police officers, then it's a success. And so, I really had to embrace being the token and being the one up front in front of different things. But I think the community benefited from it overall. And that was what was really important to me. And I think, Artie, you said that you've been fortunate that you haven't felt discrimination by your community or by your organization. And I wish that I had had that same experience. The previous place that I was at, I was keenly aware of my race every single time I entered the building. I was keenly aware of the fact that I was a female every single time I entered the building, because law enforcement is still a very male-dominated profession. We're kind of light when it comes to people of color. And so those are just things that I had to deal with. And I'm not here to complain about it. It's just the fact of what I had to go through. But it still exists. I don't care what we say to the public. There is still racism and sexism within the walls of law enforcement. So why would we not expect to see that out when we're dealing with the public?
Does allude to a topic, and just as a note to our audience, we welcome your questions. Again, in the chat feature, we have both questions and compliments coming in for the work of the panel here. Again, if you want to enter a question that we can get to in our last 15 minutes or so, please feel free to type that via the chat feature. I alluded to before the direction I wanted to head in as well around intersection and the intersection of race and being a woman, it is fair to say that, as has already been said on this panel, not only in public safety, but in public management more broadly, we are not seeing adequate representation, not only for people of color, but also for women. And so, Ingrid, I want to come to you first and then back to you, Angela. How have you navigated that? And speaking to our students of color who are women, thoughts on how they should be encouraged?
Wow, it's been tough, to be honest with you. And you know what Angela shared is, you know, being keenly aware that you're a woman and a Black woman entering the building or the conversation. I've had, you know, my share of experiences. You can't tell from the call today, but you know, just personally, I stand at 6'3" tall, and so that in and of itself is intimidating to others, right? And so then you take, you know, some of the stereotypes that may come with being a woman and then being a Black woman on top of that, and how you may be perceived when you disagree or when you have opinion to share. And so I've had to, one, just get fully comfortable in my skin, to be honest with you. I mean, again, there's, you can be around some intimidating conversations, and, you know, how do I use my voice, express myself? And, you know, I've just had to like get comfortable in my own skin and be able to contribute. But two, I think I mentioned this earlier, is that, one, I know who I am and why I'm in this role, and I have a true passion and commitment to serve everyone, regardless of opinion, regardless of background, regardless of color. I want to help my organization succeed, right? I want to improve the quality of life for residents. So that's the baseline from which I operate. And, you know, navigating, it's tough. It's tough. Sometimes you've got to have a real conversation. You know, of course, weighing what the consequences are of having that type of conversation. Sometimes it may mean that it's time to leave the organization or maybe change departments. What I would offer students and, you know, women of color that are interested in this profession is to seek out a mentor and to talk to someone to help you. I did not get here by myself. And the rest of my, you know, career that I have left will not be just Ingrid, you know, figuring this out by herself. I have to have others to talk to run things by. And so I would encourage anyone who's interested in whatever career path you're choosing, is to find a mentor, someone to help guide and navigate these tough situations and conversations. And then also what I think is important is to find someone that's going to tell you like it is and to be honest and not sugarcoat, and offer that advice and feedback. And so that's why, again, that's part of what I see as my responsibility as a leader, because there are those coming behind me and I want to help others be as successful as possible.
Angela, your thoughts in public safety?
Ingrid, I'm only 5'8", but I think I walk like I'm 6'3" because so you're lucky. I love how tall you are. I think for me, what has helped is having a good support system at home. I definitely wouldn't have been able to navigate this 24-year career without the help of my husband and my children. But also, I think what really has got me through, especially the really hard times, has been my ability to be resilient and the mindset that I can't let other people hold power over me. There was a time when I had a supervisor who I allowed him to hold power over me. I was the one that was struggling and suffering internally, like literally having physical issues like blood pressure issues and headaches and migraines and all these things because I allowed him to hold power over me. Once I let that go, it was so liberating, and it really helped me to understand that no one can hold me back, right? Like, I know that probably sounds really simple, but I think especially for women, we allow those voices in our head sometimes to get to us, or we allow external voices to stop our flow and to slow us down. And we have to block all that out and just know our worth and just have the ability to, take a punch and get back up and keep going. It's hard, but having that support system helps navigate through that.
Pete, can I add something?
Of course.
Pete, can I add something?
Of course.
I've said a couple of times that, I haven't felt discriminated stop me from moving up, but I can tell you, being in an organization, being where I am today, I'm able to help folks in terms of, I've seen discrimination though, even though it hasn't impacted my career, I've seen it impact others. And where I'm made aware of it, I've been able in my position to intervene and make sure that that people get the opportunities that they should. And I'll just give you a quick example. We all know about, reclassification studies. Someone's doing a job and they think that they're now doing something more and they should be reclassified. There was a situation where I signed off on all these reclassification requests, but when it came to a Black person, all of a sudden the bar got raised. Oh, we want to see this, we want to see that. Documents that were not requested for other folks who weren't people of color. So I'm able to get in there and talk to the department and say, look, wait a minute. Do you know that, you're being discriminatory here? You're not asking anybody else for these documents, but you're asking this Black female to provide you this, that, and the other. And so there are a lot of instances like that where I have to be the voice of recognition for people in my organization who, for some reason, don't see that what they're doing is discriminatory. It's almost like a light bulb goes off in their head. They didn't know that what they were doing was discriminatory. And I can also tell you that when I was starting out, this is just one little anecdote. I was hired as an intern. And speaking of height, Ingrid, I'm almost 6'3". And after I got the job, my supervisor said, don't forget to bring your basketball gear. We played basketball at lunch. And I told him, I said, I've tried basketball, but I'm not great at it. And he jokingly said, well, if I had known that you didn't play basketball, I wouldn't have hired you. And so he said it in a joking way, but still, it just wasn't appropriate. And he ended up being a good mentor and teaching me some lessons that really helped me move my career up. But there was a side of him that people just don't get that was discriminatory. And one more incident that occurred, I was in a city where I was responsible for hiring interns. And the first 4 interns that I hired were all Black women. And then the last intern that I hired was a white woman. And someone came up to me and said, well, Artie, if you hadn't hired so-and-so, I would have thought the only people that you hired were Black women. And it wasn't about race for me. It was about hiring the best person for the job. And for me, these Black women presented themselves as the best people for the job. And for someone to think that because I'm Black, that's the only reason why I hired these Black women was, a little, I was offended by it. And I think had I not hired the white woman, it would have been more than just why do you just hire women? It would have been why do you hire Black women? So those are just 2 anecdotes, but in my career, I've just been exposed to, discriminatory talk, gender, issues have come up, and now I'm in a position to try and just make sure that no one feels comfortable discriminating anybody for any reason, and I think all of the people on the panel are probably in that position to do that as well.
Well, friends, we're in our last 5 minutes. We have a question from one of our students, Esther, and I'm going to direct it to you, Troy. For those who may not be aware, I did note it in the bio, but we are honored to have the elected president of ICMA, which is the International City County Management Association, the largest association of local government administrators. in the country, if not the world. And so, Troy, you not only have the experience and perspective of one who's worked here in California, but you're also very much have a national perspective on the field. How are we doing, and what are the ways that we can be improving the recruitment of people of color into positions of municipal leadership?
So, one of the things that I was really involved in early in my career was an effort with the League of California Cities to identify a pipeline, because there was a baby boomer generation of city managers that were retiring. And this baby boomer generation of city managers was concerned that there wasn't a good cadre of folks behind them to lead cities. And I'm in that cadre of folks behind them to lead cities. So I got to tell you, as I look around the profession nationally, as I look at the public policy schools that I have the pleasure of interfacing with during my tenure, and even as I look into the high school and the elementary schools, I actually feel really good about the future of this profession. I think that managers will be more diverse. I will think that managers will be more of facilitators between policy and administration. And I think that we're doing a great job. I wouldn't sort of view it as how do we get people into the city management role? Yeah, I tell my team all the time, it may say city manager on the door, but everybody in this organization is at some level involved in city management. Mm. So whether you're in the parks department, whether you're in IT and finance, all of these are really valuable experiences and needs within local governments. And you could be a phenomenal finance director or an outstanding assistant city manager or a great city manager. Leading a city in the future will not be out of one person's office. It will be around a board table where they're bringing different ideas to the table. So I think that, in order to attract people into city management, first we need to broaden the concept of what we think city management is. And then from that perspective, I think that we can draw down on a lot of folks that are out there. I am seeing young people doing some amazing things on the entrepreneurial side, on the business front, that could just add tremendous value to the things that we're doing for service delivery, for performance management, for economic development. And then if they want to be city managers, the sky's the limit there. But I think that I actually feel really good about the state of the profession, and particularly how do we reach people of color? We encourage them to participate in local government at any level that they can, and so they can see the change that's happening on the ground. Or, you don't necessarily need to work for the city manager's office. Come work in my IT department. Come work in my parks department. There's phenomenal things that can help my community at a lot of different levels. And I think if you hang out with the manager long enough, everyone will want to do it. But there's no straight line towards city management. And it comes in a lot of different phases.
Well, this would be the point in the conversation, Troy, where I recommend that all the students who might be considering MBAs change their career path and consider coming here for an MPP. But I agree. I know I have my friends and colleagues from the Gracia Dio School of Business who might object to that. But last round of questions. And again, thank you so much to each of you for participating in this. Troy, I'll just say in response, not that you were looking for one, but we here at the School of Public Policy are committed to these issues and definitely want to partner with you and with ICMA more broadly. We do have an ICMA student chapter here, as you know, and Artie's been involved in our work and Ingrid's been involved in our work. And I keep begging Angela to come down here and speak to students as well, which I know is going to happen. But we definitely want to be a part of diversifying city leadership. So as we conclude, just maybe a last note of encouragement to our students who might be considering those careers in city leadership, especially our students of color or even prospective students who might be thinking about coming here to the policy school. And Artie, we'll start with you and then to Angela.
And the question is, I'm sorry?
How would you encourage our students who could go to DC and in particular, our students of color to consider careers in local government leadership?
Well, I think we all represent, different aspects of local government, and it just shows you, based on what we've heard so far, is that it's a passion. It's something that we all enjoy, and I think finding a job that can bring you enjoyment is not something that you get from every job. I mean, we get paid well, we enjoy our work, we have an impact on everyday lives of people, and you really get a chance to, just have a role in the quality of life and how people live. So I think if there's a job you want and you want to make a difference, public administration is definitely the option you should consider.
Angela.
So I think there are a couple of things here. One is when one door closes, 15 more open. I mean, that's a corny analogy, but it's so true. And I say that because you should never give up on yourself and never give up on what your dreams are. Never allow other people to stop what you're trying to do. If you choose to go into any branch of city government, but in particular in law enforcement, particularly in law enforcement, this is actually a really rewarding career. Yeah, we see the dark side of it, right? And we see the negative, but there are so many positive things to this profession. And I think that one person really has the ability to affect change and to bring about progressive policing and to really help their communities in a meaningful way. And so I would just encourage all of you to just do some research and find out maybe what your passion is and see where you fit in, and just never give up on yourself. The biggest investment should be in yourself. And so good luck to all the students. And thank you so much for letting me babble on here today on this panel.
Awesome as usual, Angela. Thank you. Troy, let's come to you, and then Ingrid will conclude with your encouragement.
I think that, look, demographically speaking, the numbers are in our favor, particularly for people of color. I mean, for good city managers, what we do is we look at data, and I'm going to touch on a question that was sort of posed in the comments here. So how do we prepare for this, right? How do we prepare for this change in demographics, and what does it mean? We have to stay on the cutting edge of what's going on, not only from a national, but from a local and a statewide perspective. And we have to see what's happening in our communities and react to that in a way that moves us continually forward. So if I'm looking at an increased number of Latino people coming into my community or living in my community through the result of census data, I now have to think about how am I going to serve that group, right? And the way that you do that is you talk to them, you implement multicultural events, multicultural language, but at the same time you embrace that and you keep the policymakers abreast of what's going on. So in order to do that, you sort of have to be on the ground. And there's a lot of different ways that you can impact that change. I think what you're doing right now, as Angela stated, the investment in yourself is probably the most important thing that you could do, because there's never that point in time where you're just ready to be a city manager or a city leader. It's an evolution over time and a growth over time. So plugging yourself into this, getting mentors, understanding the trends that are happening in your community and around you so that you can develop your own values and thoughts to approaches to how to deal with that are all going to add value to you. There's tremendous opportunity out there, and it's coming. When I was hired, my council told me it wasn't a matter of if it was going to be a person of color, it was which color, because there were multiple diverse candidates that they had to choose from. So there's plenty of opportunities out there. Continue to invest in yourself and, just go for it. Keep doing the things you're doing and go for it.
Ingrid, we'll close with you.
So I would just encourage you all to, one, network. There are plenty of student organizations, as you know, about the ICMA chapter. There's Municipal Management Association of Southern California. Use those as an opportunity to attend workshops or conferences. Hopefully in the not so distant future, we'll be back to being able to meet in person, but those are opportunities to connect with city managers, with department heads, or other people that are already working in local government. So by making those connections, you're able to potentially open a door for yourself. I also think it's important we talked about this earlier, but finding a mentor, someone that can help you, just sort of navigate how to move about in this career. I can tell you all that everyone on this call has had a different path and experience to where they are. The beautiful thing about city government is that there's so many doors that you can walk through. There's, parks and recreation, there's, libraries, there's museums, there's finance, there's public works, there's all these different avenues, and they don't always require, depending on the position, they don't always require technical experience. And so if you can get your foot in the door through one of the departments and just learn, within that department, and then get your feet wet of how city government works, it can open up several doors for you. Don't give up. There's going to be plenty of doors shut in your face. There's going to be some opportunities that you want, and the answer is going to be no. But you just have to be resilient and just keep looking for those opportunities that you are interested in. So I'll stop there.
Thanks so much, Ingrid. Well, Angela, Artie, Troy, Ingrid, thank you so much for your time, but also your example. I'll close just by saying a word that was used by a couple of you as it relates to a decision to pursue a career in public service was calling. I have to say that's one that I take very near and dear to my heart, both for me, but also for the School of Public Policy. That is a dimension, a perspective, if you will, that we take very seriously. And so I want to thank you all for answering that call in your own particular ways, but also helping others, both in your examples, but also in this time together, to help them to consider whether they're being called to a life of public service, particularly at the local level. And so with that, thank you all for joining us on this panel. Each of you who have registered will be getting a link to the video from this conversation within the next 24 or 48 hours. We encourage you to share it with people in your network. That's how we extend the impact of these events. And though we had over 100 people registered for this, I know that we have several videos on our YouTube channel that have been seen by hundreds of thousands. And so we definitely welcome your sharing this video when you receive it shortly. So from the Dean's Conference Room here at the School of Public Policy in Malibu, California, thank you so much for joining us and look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you and God bless.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.